You know, we live in what's supposed to be the most connected time in human history. So how is it that a screen full of faces, a feed full of friends, can somehow leave us feeling more alone than ever? That's the huge question we're tackling today, what we're calling the loneliness paradox. And this quote from MIT professor Sherry Turkle, well, it just completely nails the theme for our discussion. It points to this really fundamental trade-off. As we start to lean more and more on our tech for connection, are we kind of forgetting how to actually connect with each other? We're going to see this idea pop up again and again. So, picture this scene. It's 2 in the morning, someone's sitting in a dark, quiet house, and they're typing a deep personal secret into some anonymous online forum, a secret they've never even told their own partner. And for a second, they feel seen. They feel understood. But then they close the laptop, and the silence in the room suddenly feels heavier, more profound than before. That little flicker of connection is just gone, and what's left behind is an even deeper sense of being alone. That right there, that's the paradox we're talking about. And that feeling, it's not just a one-off story. The data is pretty shocking. Despite building the most amazing communication network in history, reported rates of loneliness have literally doubled in the last 50 years. We have more ways to talk to each other than ever before, but we're feeling more alone. So why? Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this paradox, we have to start with the most basic question. What is it that draws us to these digital spaces in the first place? Well, the answer often starts with the powerful and sometimes, kind of deceptive lure of anonymity. The core concept here is something called the Online Disinhibition Effect. A psychologist named John Suler came up with this back in 2004. Basically, without someone sitting right in front of you, without seeing their immediate reactions or worrying about social consequences, our internal filters, they just start to drop. We feel free to say things we would probably never, ever say in person. And you can see just how huge this effect is in the data. A study from 2002 found that a staggering 85% of people felt comfortable discussing taboo topics in an online chat. Now compare that to a face-to-face conversation. That number just plummets to 35%. I mean, that's a massive difference, and it really shows you just how much anonymity changes everything. Okay, so if we're being so incredibly honest online, why does it so often lead to feeling lonely? This brings us right to the heart of the mystery, to a concept we're going to call the honesty-intimacy gap. And this is really where the paradox takes hold. See, just because we're being open, it doesn't automatically mean we're building a real connection. Research totally confirms this. While that online honesty gives you a temporary rush, a feeling of closeness, it very rarely translates into the kind of lasting, deep intimacy that actually fights off loneliness. This key finding from back in 2003 really drives the point home. It shows this dangerous cycle, right? People turn to these digital spaces to try and escape their loneliness, but relying on them too much can end up making the isolation even worse. It just amplifies the very thing they were trying to solve. Now let's break down the science behind why this gap even exists. Why does all that honesty feel so hollow in the end? The answer, it turns out, is in our own biology and psychology. It's this idea of getting truth without any of the touch. So if you look at a neurochemical level, you can see this conflict playing out in our brains. Online, we get a little dopamine hit from fast replies and likes. It feels good, it's rewarding, and it creates this illusion of connection. But what's often missing is oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone. That's the stuff that gets released through physical interaction, through nonverbal cues, and it's what helps us truly feel empathy and connect on a deeper level. And it's not just brain chemistry. The gap gets wider for other really key reasons. Psychologically, we're missing all those nonverbal cues, the tone of voice, the look on someone's face, that build real empathy. Cognitively, the internet literally trains our brains to scan and share quickly, not to engage in the deep, focused attention that real understanding needs. And socially, well, these platforms are designed to give us hundreds of weak ties, instead of a few really strong, supportive ones. Now, you might be thinking this all sounds like it's about old-school chat rooms from the early 2000s, but the thing is, this fundamental paradox, it has evolved right along with our technology. And in fact, it's probably more relevant today than it has ever been. Just look at this timeline. Back in the 2000s, it was all about anonymity in places like Yahoo Chat. Then in the 2010s, social media on our phones just completely blurred the lines between our online and offline lives. And now we're entering the era of the AI listener, companions like Replica that promise to be there for you 24/7. The tech changes, but that core issue of honest disclosure without deep human connection, it's still right. So where does all this leave us? I mean, are we just doomed to this cycle of digital honesty and real-world loneliness? Well, not necessarily. Let's talk about how we can start to actually bridge this gap. There are a few ways we can tackle this. I mean, it starts with the platforms themselves. They could be designed to encourage more trust. On a personal level, we can be way more intentional about how we use these tools. And looking ahead, we could even start teaching skills like digital empathy in schools to get the next generation ready for this new world. So here's a really practical, personal strategy you can use. Think of it like a ladder. You can use that easy online openness as just a starting point, right? A gateway. So step 1, find some common ground through chat. Then, step 2, move to a video call, which brings back some of those super important nonverbal cues. And then finally, step 3, transition that connection to an in-person meeting. That's where the real lasting bonds can actually form. Ultimately, this all comes down to a really simple but profound truth. There is a huge difference between having the freedom to speak your mind and having the feeling of truly being heard. The problem we're facing isn't a lack of honesty, it's a lack of deep, meaningful connection. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. When we go online to share our deepest, most private thoughts, are we truly sharing ourselves and building connection? Or are we maybe just broadcasting our loneliness out into the void, hoping to hear an echo?